Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show that shortcuts you to being truly well-informed on the most complex topics. And today we are really getting into a situation that is, it's the stuff of nightmares for any innovator, for any company out there.
It really is.
Imagine this. You've poured years of research, maybe millions of dollars, into a vital new piece of technology. Yeah. In this case, it's a system for measuring liquefied natural gas, so a huge deal in the energy sector. And then the entire patent application for it is just wiped out. It's legally considered withdrawn, all because a professional you hired, a patent agent, mixed up a single year on a calendar.
And that's the collision we're diving into today. The core of our deep dive is really a landmark judgment from the High Court of Delhi. It's the order in SYNERTEC PTY LTD v. Union of India and ANR.
Okay.
And it answers this fundamental question. When you have a law with these incredibly strict mandatory deadlines, can the courts ever step in? Can they prevent a simple technical mistake from causing just a massive injustice?
So this is about where the line is between the letter of the law and, I guess, the spirit of it.
Exactly. Our mission here is to really break down the facts of this case, get into the weeds of Indian patent law, specifically Section 11B, and then, walk through the 11 key aspects of the court's decision. We're going to show you the very specific, extraordinary circumstances where the judiciary uses its power to grant a second chance. It's a crucial blueprint, really, for understanding that balance between following the rules and doing what's right.
All right, let's start with the basics then. The who, what, and where. For anyone who wants to look this case up, what are the foundational details?
Okay, so the case number is WPC-IPD 532025. The IPD there just signifies it's in the Intellectual Property Division.
Danish court.
The High Court of Delhi at New Delhi. This is important because, the Delhi High Court has really become a major hub for clarifying these kinds of complex patent issues.
And the decision is fairly recent.
Very recent. The order was handed down on November 3rd, 2025. And the judge presiding over this was the Honorable Miss Justice Manmeet Pratam Singh Arora.
The fact that this was handled under the court's writ jurisdiction, that already tells you something, right? This isn't just a simple appeal.
Absolutely. It signals that the petitioner was asking for an extraordinary remedy, something beyond the normal scope of the Patent Office's power. We'll definitely dig into that more.
Okay, so who were the parties involved in this fight?
On one side, you have the petitioner. That's the company trying to save its invention. They are SYNERTEC PTY LTD, an Australian company.
And they were up against the government?
Essentially, yes. The respondents were the Union of India and ANR. ANR just means and another. This basically represents the central government and, more practically, the Indian Patent Office itself. They were the ones who had to enforce the law and declare the patent withdrawn.
And looking at the legal teams, this wasn't a minor skirmish.
Not at all. SYNERTEC, the petitioner, was represented by a team including Ms. Saya Chaudhary Kapoor, Mr. Rohan Swarup, and Ms. Sanyam Suri.
A full team.
Right. And the government side, the respondents, were represented by Mr. Gaurav Abrathi and Mr. Sarvesh P. Srivastava. The point is, both sides brought in serious legal talent. This tells you the stakes were incredibly high, and the outcome was going to set a precedent that went far beyond this one single patent application.
Okay, so the stage is set. Let's move to the invention itself. To really feel the weight of what was at stake, we need to understand what this patent was actually for. What does application number 2022-170-30233 do?
So the technology is pretty sophisticated. It's a new system and method for vaporizing liquefied natural gas, or LNG. But the key part is why you're vaporizing it.
For measurement, right?
Exactly, for accurate measurement. LNG is a massive global commodity. You transport it as a super-cooled liquid, but to use it or sell it, you have to turn it back into gas. The problem is, measuring the exact volume and energy content during that phase change is notoriously difficult.
And even a small inaccuracy could mean
millions of dollars. Billions even, over the life of a large supply contract. A tiny percentage point of error when you're talking about a tanker ship full of LNG is a huge amount of money. SYNERTEC's invention was designed to remove those inaccuracies that were common in the older methods.
So this is core industrial tech, not a consumer gadget. The incentive to protect it worldwide would be massive.
Paramount. Which brings us to the timeline, and you can see their diligence right from the start. The whole clock for any patent application starts ticking from what's called the priority date.
The very first filing anywhere in the world.
Right. And for them, that was their Australian filing on November 27th, 2019. That date is the anchor for everything that follows.
They kept pursuing it from there.
Absolutely. A year later to the day, November 27th, 2020, they filed the PCT application. That's the international phase. Then on May 26th, 2022, they enter the national phase in India. So they're following the procedure to the letter. Their application gets published in India on September 9th, 2022. Everything looks perfect.
Okay, so they're doing everything right. They're diligent. They're spending money. They clearly want this patent. So where does the train go off the rails? It's this request for examination, the RFE.
That's it, the RFE.
Explain what that is. Why is it so critical?
So in a lot of countries, including India, just filing your patent application doesn't automatically mean the patent office starts examining it. You can think of the initial filing as just getting your place in line.
It secures your date.
It secures your priority date. The RFE, which is filed using Form 18, is the next crucial step. It's you, the applicant, formally telling the patent office, okay, I'm serious about this. Here's the fee. Please start the substantive examination of my claims.
And if you don't file it?
Well, the law is incredibly strict. Under Section 11B of the Patents Act, you must file the RFE within 48 months of that earliest priority date.
So let's do the math. The priority date was November 27th, 2019. 48 months from then would be?
November 27th, 2023. That was the absolute drop-dead deadline.
And missing it isn't just a penalty.
No. It's fatal. Section 11B, subsection 4, says the application shall be treated as withdrawn. It's an automatic, self-executing consequence. The application just ceases to exist in the eyes of the law.
Which is what happened here. So what was the error? How did they miss a date that important?
This is where the paper trail saved them. The court record shows that on October 12, 2022, the Indian patent agent sent an email to SYNERTEC in Australia advising them of the deadline.
Okay.
But the email said the deadline was November 27th, 2024. They were off by exactly 1 year.
How does that even happen? How do you make a mistake like that?
It's a classic and unfortunately common docketing error for international applications. The agent mistakenly calculated the 48 months not from the Australian priority date of November 2019.
But from the PCT filing date of November 2020.
Exactly. They used the wrong start date. It's a simple clerical mistake, but one with catastrophic consequences.
So on November 27th, 2023, when the real deadline passed, SYNERTEC thought they still had an entire year left to file.
That's right. And because the withdrawal is automatic, the Patent Office didn't send out a letter saying, hey, you missed your deadline. They just updated the status in their internal records. The application was legally dead, and the applicant had no idea.
So when did they finally find out?
Almost a full year later. On November 11th, 2024, SYNERTEC, operating under the wrong information, followed up with their agent to get the RFE filing sorted. It was only then that the agent checked the official online records and saw the status, deemed to be withdrawn.
Oh, that must have been a horrifying discovery.
Can you imagine? And that, of course, triggered the immediate filing of the writ petition to the High Court.
So that really crystallizes the legal issue, doesn't it? It
Yes.
boils down to this. Can the High Court use its extraordinary constitutional powers to resurrect a patent that the statute says is permanently withdrawn?
Right.
When the reason for the failure wasn't the inventor's fault, but the documented error of the professional they hired to prevent exactly this kind of mistake.
That is the whole case in a nutshell. It's a direct conflict between procedural certainty, which the Patent Office needs, and, well, basic fairness.
Okay, so that sets up the arguments perfectly. Let's look at what SYNERTEC, the petitioner, argued to the court. How did they try to convince the judge that their case was special?
Their case was built on two main pillars. First, prove beyond any doubt that they were diligent and had no intention of giving up the patent. And second, prove that the error was 100% external to them.
So the no intention to abandon argument, what evidence did they use?
It was compelling. They pointed to their entire course of conduct, filing the PCT on time, entering India on time. But the real kicker was evidence of their global strategy. They showed the court that they were actively prosecuting the same patent in other countries. And crucially,
U.S. patents.
the U.S. patent had already been granted. That's a massive piece of evidence. It's very hard to argue that a company would fight to get a patent in a market like the United States, but then just carelessly abandon it in another major market like India.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It proves the value they placed on the invention.
It's the strongest proof of intent you can have. It shows investment, it shows value, and it makes the withdrawal look like what it was, an accident.
Okay, so that's the diligence part. What about pinning the blame on the agent?
This is where their record keeping was so important. They didn't just say, our agent made a mistake. They produced the smoking gun. The email from October 12th, 2022, the one with the wrong 2024 date in it.
So they had documentary proof.
They had the proof. And that changes everything. It's no longer just a case of them forgetting. It's a case of them actively relying on incorrect professional advice. They were being diligent, but their diligence was guided by a faulty map given to them by their navigator.
I see. Did they make any other arguments?
A smaller one, but still relevant. They pointed out the lack of a formal communicative order from the Patent Office. While the withdrawal is automatic, they argued that because no specific notice was sent, it made it harder for them to discover the error in a timely fashion.
And finally, they must have leaned on precedent.
Heavily. They cited two very important Delhi High Court cases, European Union and Breyer. They essentially argued that the court had already created a pathway for this kind of relief. They were asking the judge to follow a path that the court itself had already paved in similar situations involving agent error.
Okay, a strong case. So what was the counter-argument from the government, from the Union of India? They had to be defending the integrity of the law itself.
They did. Their argument was simple, powerful, and based entirely on the text of the statute.
Which is?
Their primary point was the mandatory operation of law. They said, look, we don't dispute the facts, but they are irrelevant. The RFE was not filed in 48 months. Section 11B4 says the application shall be treated as withdrawn. It's not maybe, it's shall be.
So no wiggle room.
No discretion. They argued the Patent Office has no power to waive that deadline. The law is the law, and their job is just to apply it mechanically. If they start making exceptions for one company's agent, where does it end?
That's a fair point. It could open the floodgates. The entire system relies on predictable deadlines.
That's the core policy concern. Their second point flowed from that. They argue that there was no error by the respondent. The Patent Office did nothing wrong. The fault lay 100% on the petitioner's side with their chosen agent. The office just recorded the legal consequence of that failure.
They were just the scorekeeper.
An accurate scorekeeper, applying the rules of the game. And finally, they made a very subtle but important point about judicial discretion. They essentially conceded that, yes, the High Court, with its extraordinary constitutional powers, could potentially grant relief.
Oh.
But, they argued, even if the court does grant relief, it shouldn't be framed as the Patent Office having made a mistake. The Patent Office acted correctly and legally based on the statute. The High Court would be acting equitably from a higher constitutional plane. It's a key distinction.
So they were trying to protect the integrity of their own actions, even if the court decided to ultimately overturn the outcome.
Precisely. They were saying, you can save this applicant if you must, but don't say we did our job wrong. The implicit argument is always that a high bar must be maintained. If the court is going to intervene, it has to be for only the most exceptional, well-documented cases, like this one. to avoid setting a dangerous precedent.
All right, so after weighing these two powerful arguments, the diligent inventor versus the integrity of the statute, what did the court decide? What was the final holding?
The court came down firmly on the side of equity. The final ruling was that the writ petition was allowed.
So they won.
They won. The court officially set aside the status of deemed to have been withdrawn. It directed the Patent Office to revive and restore the application to its original number and status.
And did they give SYNERTEC a new deadline to file the RFE?
Yes, and a tight one. As part of the order, the court directed the petitioner to file Form 18, the RFE, within 2 weeks. So no more delays. They got their second chance, but they had to act on it immediately.
Okay, now for the most important part of this whole deep dive, the reasoning. How did Justice Arora legally justify this? How do you get around the mandatory shall be withdrawn language in a statute?
This is where the judgment becomes so valuable as a precedent. It's a masterclass in balancing statutory text with constitutional power. The reasoning had several layers.
Let's unpack them.
First, the court started by acknowledging the respondent's point. It gave a full-throated confirmation of the statute. The judgment says, yes, Section 11B and Rule 24B are mandatory. Missing the 48-month deadline automatically results in withdrawal. The Patent Office was correct in recording that status.
So the court agrees the Patent Office did its job correctly. That's a crucial starting point.
It is, because it means the court isn't saying the law is wrong. It's saying that applying the law in this specific instance leads to an unjust result that requires a higher-level intervention.
Okay, so after confirming the law, where did the analysis go?
It pivoted. It shifted focus from the mechanical action of the Patent Office to the mindset and conduct of the petitioner. The court went through that timeline we discussed, the PCT filing, the Indian filing, the global patents.
The proof of diligence.
Exactly. The judgment explicitly says that the petitioner's actions prove they had no intention to withdraw the application. This finding is the moral and legal foundation for the whole decision. The applicant was, in the court's eyes, an innocent party.
So once you establish the applicant is innocent, you have to find the guilty party, so to speak.
Right. And the court did just that. It forensically examined the evidence, the agent's email from 2022 with the wrong date, and then the agent's later email from 2024 admitting the mistake. The judgment details exactly how the error occurred using the PCT date instead of the priority date.
And how did the court characterize that error? Was it just negligence?
The court specifically called it a clerical and inadvertent error. That wording is critical. The court was drawing a line. This relief isn't for cases where an agent is just generally sloppy or grossly negligent. It's for a specific, identifiable, and unintentional mistake. Because SYNERTEC could prove they were acting based on this specific piece of misinformation, their failure was excused.
So this brings us to the legal doctrine the court used to actually grant the relief.
Yes, the liberal approach to agent error. The court stated that errors made by professional representatives, like patent agents, should be viewed liberally, especially when the client has proven their own diligence. The logic is that the whole purpose of the Patents Act is to encourage innovation by granting patents. If a procedural hiccup by a third party kills that substantive right for a deserving inventor, it defeats the entire purpose of the law.
So substance over procedure.
In extraordinary cases, yes. And to justify this, the court made its most powerful move, the analogy to advocates. This is where the reasoning really broadens out. The court stated that a patent agent's mistake is, for all intents and purposes, the same as a mistake made by a lawyer representing a client in a civil or criminal case.
That's a huge leap.
It is, and it's brilliant because by making that connection, the court could import a whole body of established Supreme Court law into this patent dispute. There are decades of rulings that say an ordinary person shouldn't suffer the ultimate penalty because of a mistake made by their lawyer.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The judgment cites a famous case, Rafiq v. Munchilo. In that case, the Supreme Court said that a litigant trusts their lawyer to handle the procedure. They can't be expected to know all the court deadlines and filing rules themselves. That's why they hire a professional. So if the professional messes up, punishing the client is unjust.
I see. So if I hire an expert to navigate a complex system for me, I shouldn't be penalized if the expert is the one who makes a mistake.
That's the principle. The court is applying that same logic to the world of R&D and innovation. A company like SYNERTEC hires an Indian patent agent precisely because they don't know the intricacies of Indian patent filing deadlines. They are relying on that professional's expertise.
So this all hinges on the High Court's special power. It's not something the Patent Office could have ever done on its own.
Not in a million years. This is all about the court's writ jurisdiction under Articles 226 and 227 of the Constitution. The Patent Office is a creature of statute. It can only do what the Patents Act allows. The High Court's power is constitutional. It sits above the statute. It can intervene to prevent a grave miscarriage of justice.
And the court saw this as a miscarriage of justice.
It did. But Justice Arora was very careful to hedge this. The judgment stresses that this kind of relief is only for extraordinary cases. It's not a free pass. The court will only step in when the applicant can show the failure was due to circumstances not attributable to it. Your own hands have to be completely clean.
So if SYNERTEC had just, say, forgotten about the patent for a year and then tried to blame their agent after the fact without proof?
No chance. The court would have called that gross negligence on their part and denied the relief. The distinction between an inadvertent, documented clerical error and just general carelessness is the entire ballgame.
It seems like the documented proof was the key that unlocked everything.
Without a doubt. The court's final conclusion on the facts was that the chronology left no doubt that SYNERTEC wasn't negligent, had no intention to abandon the patent, and suffered this extreme consequence because of a mistake that wasn't their fault. And that met the high bar for constitutional intervention.
This decision seems to build on a trend. It wasn't created in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
What were the precedents the court was really leaning on here?
You're right. It's the culmination of a line of reasoning. The first major pillar was a 2022 decision, European Union v. Union of India. This case really broke the ground.
What was that one about?
Interestingly, it was about a different kind of deadline. It was about the failure to respond to the first examination report, or FAR, on time. Just like the RFE, if you miss the FAR deadline, your application is deemed abandoned.
So a different rule, but the same consequence.
Exactly. And in the European Union case, the court first established this principle that it could step in to prevent that extreme consequence of abandonment if the applicant could prove they were diligent and the fault lay with their agent. SYNERTEC's lawyers basically took the logic from that case and applied it to their RFE deadline problem.
So that case opened the door.
It did. And then a 2024 case, Breyer v. Union of India, walked right through it. Breyer confirmed the European Union ruling, showing it wasn't a one-off. It solidified this liberal approach as a consistent legal doctrine in the Delhi High Court. So by the time SYNERTEC's case came along, the path was well established.
So we have these two high court decisions plus the Supreme Court cases about lawyers' mistakes. It sounds like an airtight argument. Was there any dissent in this case?
No, none at all. Since this was an order from a single judge, there's no dissenting or concurring opinion to consider. It stands as the clear ruling of the court on this matter, reinforcing that line of precedent.
Okay, let's zoom out. What is the bigger picture here? What's the legal significance of this decision for the world of intellectual property?
I think it's hugely significant for a few reasons. First, it represents a crucial softening of these otherwise rigid mandatory rules. It sends a message that while the statute is the default, it's not the final word. The High Court is there as a constitutional safety net to ensure fairness.
It puts a human element back into a very mechanical process.
It does. Second, and this is really important for global business, it provides a massive degree of comfort and risk mitigation for foreign applicants. Think about it from SYNERTEC's perspective in Australia. They have to rely completely on their local Indian counsel. This judgment tells them, and every other international company, that if you choose to file in India, the system has a safeguard. You won't lose everything because of a localized procedural mistake, as long as you can prove you were doing your part.
But it also puts the onus on them to prove it.
Absolutely, and that's the third point. This case effectively defines what diligence means in this context. It's not a vague concept. It means having a verifiable paper trail. It means contemporaneous, documented proof. The case is both a roadmap for how to get relief and a warning that if you don't have your documentation in order, that door to relief will be slammed shut.
So in a way, it actually raises the professional standards for everyone involved.
I think so. It reinforces the accountability of patent agents. Their work is now explicitly on par with that of a court advocate. The consequences of their mistakes are clear, and the courts have shown they will act to protect the client when those mistakes happen. It creates this very specific, very narrow escape hatch for genuine inventors, but one that's designed to be very difficult for a merely negligent applicant to use.
So after this incredible deep dive, if we had to boil it all down to the single most important key takeaway, what would it be?
It would have to be this. In Indian patent law, the statutory deadlines are, for all practical purposes, mandatory, and the Patent Office will enforce them strictly. However, and this is the crucial part, the Delhi High Court will use its extraordinary constitutional power to save your patent application if, and only if, you can provide clear, irrefutable documentary evidence that you always intended to pursue the patent and that the failure was caused solely by an inadvertent error of your patent agent, not by your own negligence.
Documentation is everything.
It is the entire case.
That was a fantastic journey through a really complex legal decision. We've seen the court walk this incredibly fine line between respecting the letter of the law and ensuring that justice and equity prevail. I mean, at the end of the day, they prevented a multi-billion-dollar industrial innovation from being erased because of what was essentially a one-digit typo in an email.
It's a powerful reminder. In the world of intellectual property, the most mundane administrative details, the dates, the deadlines, the email chains, can be just as critical to your success as the brilliant technical idea at the heart of your invention.
So let me leave you, our listener, with a provocative thought that really grows out of this case.
Go for it.
If the survival of your most valuable asset, your patent, could hinge entirely on your ability to produce an email from 2 years ago, how should that change the way companies operate? Should every single communication with your patent agent, especially about deadlines, be treated with the same level of formal rigor as if you were submitting evidence to a court? Because this case suggests that your procedural documentation isn't just administrative background noise, it's your ultimate insurance policy.
A profound thought. It's about building your case file from day one, not just after something goes wrong.
Exactly. Thank you so much for guiding us through this.
It was my pleasure.
And thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We'll see you next time.